essentially every culture has a flood, an ancient flood story where the entire earth or a portion of the earth is flooded, and then a remnant of people are the ones who survive the flood. And that to me signals a commonality between all these cultures. So a lot of people look at this and say that that just must be, everybody has this idea for some reason. And people don't like to look and say, what if that's actually coming from a common story that is twisted and, plays the telephone game? And so we end up with these kind of incongruous ideas of it now. And that is the essential idea that I'm going to support. There's one reason too why I think the flood narrative is actually, from a Christian perspective, the last narrative that we get that is really the most in common with all cultures. So all the cultures might have this idea of like a hierarchy of rebellious gods, and they have this they have a creation epic typically, and they have like a flood or global destruction and remnant epic. And then after that is where you get into a lot of the differences. And the reason for that, I think, is because the flood story is the last story before cultures are dramatically separated. So in the Jewish scriptures or in the Christian Old Testament, in the flood narrative, after they land and the remnant of Noah's family survives, it is a few generations after that where we have the Tower of Babel event. And the Tower of Babel event is the one that we're going to be focusing on the most importantly today. So at the Tower of Babel event, first of all, it says that the people are scattered across the earth because they are becoming too powerful, and they build what is commonly conceived to be a ziggurat, which is a sort of religious structure that's built to have contact with God or the heavens. And so they're becoming too oppressive, and they say basically we're going to build up to the heavens. Or some interpretations say they're trying to fight God, or they're trying to confront God, or they're trying to make themselves into gods. And God wants to challenge their humanity, and so he scatters and he says, let's confuse first their languages, and then let's scatter them to the four winds all across the earth. And if it happens supernaturally, then it makes sense for us to then have Native Americans who are mystically transported over to the North American continent and the South American continent, and to have people who are transported over into the Orient, and to have people that are transported all across the middle areas. And then they all have these different ideas of flood epics because it's either miscommunicated or purposely twisted. And I'll discuss maybe a little bit more on that as well. So if you have that being the scenario, which I think is highly likely, it actually makes sense that that would be the last story in common before they're separated to the four winds. Before people are confused in language and separated, the last common event they have is the flood. And it's a few generations after that flood, which they all would have had some kind of ancestry to, that they would then be separated across the entire world. And then at that point, the cultures become separate.